Welcome to C Programming Tutorials. This is a production of YouTube channel Learnorama and the Facebook page Awesome C Programming Tutorials in High Def. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel and become the fan of the Facebook page. Okay, in today's tutorial we are going to learn about how to create, how to store data in a file. In other words, how to create a simple database. What is a database? A database is simply it's simply the way it's simply storage of information, an organized storage of information that you could basically manage and retrieve whenever you want. And most of the time it's actually permanent in the sense that it's not volatile. In other words, it doesn't need electrical power or any other kind of power to stay stay alive, or to basically continue to retain the data. In other words, it's totally persistent. So let's suppose we have this problem in front of us, that you want to store. Let's take the example of a class one more time. You want to store the information about students, and what would be the information? The information would consist of only two things. Okay, one is the name of the student, and second is that some kind of test score. Okay, out of 100, right? We want to keep just keep things simple. Okay, so that's all we want to store. We want to store the name, and we want to store the name, and we want to store the score, right? That's all we are going to do, and we are going to store it for each and every student. Okay, so what are we going to do? We want to write a program that's going to input the information from the user. So it will ask, okay, what's the name, what's the score, what's the name, what's the score, what's the name, what's the score of that student, and so on. And the thing is that so far we could write that program very easily. The problem is that so far the way we have written before is basically you could run the program. It will ask you for all this information, and then it may also process it. But as soon as it is done with it, as soon as the program stops running, as soon as you exit the program, all the data is vanished. Why? Because everything was in memory, and memory is volatile. We want to keep this stored permanently in some database, and for this we will be basically storing all this information in the form of a file, a simple text file. So this will create a simple database of the information about each and every student. So let's get started. So if you think about it, we have to basically repeatedly get this information. What do we have to get? We have to get the name, and we have to get the score. Okay, so we have to do it repeatedly, so there has to be some kind of loop here, right? Now there are two ways of approaching it. One is that you ask the user upfront that how many students are there, and you loop for that many times. This way, you have a fixed. You could use for loop because you already know how many times you have to loop, because you asked in the beginning how many students are there. Okay, or more flexible way would be to basically keep entering the information for as long as the user wants. So you ask the name and score of one student, and then ask, are there any more? And if the user says yes, then you enter this and ask the user to enter this information one more time, and then again ask if there is if there are any more students left, and user says yes, then you basically basically input the information one more time, and so on. Okay, so very simple. Either way, there will be loops involved. So in the first case, there will be for loop, because we already know how many times you have to loop. In the second case, we will have to use while loop, because we want to be doing it as long as, or doing it while the user keeps on saying yes, I have more data to input. Okay, so we will be using a while loop in this case. It's totally up to you, whatever you want to use. In either case, it's fine. Let's try to do it with the while loop. Okay, so what are we gonna do? We are gonna say while, and then in while you have to have some condition that we will have to figure out and let's say we will figure it out a little later. Okay, but what we have to do in the body of the while loop, in other words, what we have to continue to do in every time when we iterate through this loop, what is the thing that we have to do repeatedly? It's basically to input the student name and the test score of the student. So how do we do that? Simply we print out a message on the screen saying name, okay, and then we ask the user to enter the name, right? And we store that in a string, and the way to create a string is basically an array of characters, and we are assuming that there will be maximum of 20 characters in the name, and then we are leaving one character for the end of string character, and this will actually store this information inside this string name. And then we ask the user for the test score, okay, and we input that as a number into, I don't know, a score variable. And remember, since it's going to be an integer variable, we have to provide the address. See, scanf always needs an address here, so score will, being an integer, does not represent an address, the name of the variable score. It has to be, we have to explicitly provide the address by using the ampersand operator. Here we do not have to do it because name is an array. It's a string, but it's an array of characters which represents actually the address of this array. Integer score. Okay, now at this point we have the name, we have the score. Okay, what do we have to do next? Now, next thing we have to do is to store this information in the database, which will be our file abc.txt. Let's call it something better, database.txt. Okay, we'll store this information in the database, but let's not worry about that for now. Okay, let's see what we are going to do next. After this, we have to, what do we have to do after entering the information of about one student? We have to ask the user, do you have any more? Okay, are there any more students? Okay, very simple. And we want the user to say yes or no to that question, right? And for this, and then at this point we have to enter one character, either Y or N. Okay, that's all we need to enter right now. Okay, so we have to enter one character. You never use, usually, you know, a scanf %c would, you might think that that's what you should do, because you know you want to store, you want to input input a character. We do not use a scanf to input the characters, and the reason is that scanf actually what it does is the inherent nature of scanf is basically you input something and then you press enter, and at this point the scanf knows that you are done with inputting. Now enter itself is a character. If you are only asking to enter one character, scanf is not an ideal function to use. Instead, you should use what is either getch or get char or getch. Okay, let's use getch. We have been using getch before, if you remember. In every program we have this getch, which actually waits for user to input one character. And the reason we have been using it here is because we are not interested in the character that user entered. Here we are only interested in stopping the window to close basically, because otherwise the window will just, as soon as the program will end, the window is going to close, and we don't want this to happen. Okay, now what getch does is it returns the character. Okay, so let's say we call it answer, and answer would be a character. Actually it returns an integer, but you know, integer has the character in it, so let's not worry about it. Assume that answer getch returns a character, so we are going to store this answer, whatever the user entered as character, inside answer. And I'm gonna stop here because I'm running out of time, and I'll continue it in the next video, part 2 of this tutorial. So don't forget to watch it. Thank you so much.